Blood dripped onto the snow in bright red spots, leaving a trail that led straight to downtown Anchorage. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stopped her Jeep at the traffic light at 2:17 a.m. when she saw something that made her heart freeze. A massive gray she-wolf stood in the middle of Northern Avenue, her yellow eyes blazing under the neon signs, blood trickling from her left paw. "What the hell?" Sarah whispered, slowly getting out of the car. In 12 years working as a biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, she had never seen a wild wolf venture so deep into the city. The she-wolf wasn't running, wasn't growling. She just stared at Sarah with some strange determination. Alaskan wolves avoided humans at all costs, but this animal stood under the streetlights as if waiting for something or someone. Sarah slowly crouched down, pulling an emergency kit from her pocket. "Hey, girl," she said quietly, showing her empty palms. "Let me take a look at that paw." The she-wolf tilted her head, her ears perked up. Then the incredible happened. She approached. Each step was difficult for her, her left front paw barely touching the asphalt. When she stopped 2 feet from Sarah, the woman saw the wound, a deep cut, as if from a metal trap. "Someone hurt you," Sarah whispered, carefully unwrapping the bandage. The she-wolf remained motionless, allowing the human to touch her. Her breathing was heavy but calm. As Sarah bandaged the wound, the she-wolf never took her eyes off her. There was something disturbing in that gaze, not gratitude, but rather a request. As if this animal had come not just for help. "I need to show you to a veterinarian," Sarah said, finishing the bandage. But the she-wolf suddenly stood up, looked back at Sarah, and took a few steps toward the city outskirts. She stopped, turned around again. Sarah's heart raced. The she-wolf was waiting for her to follow. In all her years working with wild animals, Sarah knew one rule: never follow a predator into the darkness. But something about this she-wolf's behavior was different. She wasn't hunting. She was asking for help. "Do you want me to follow you?" Sarah asked quietly. The she-wolf whimpered, a sound that wild wolves almost never make near humans. Then she turned and began slowly walking deeper into the dark forest beyond the city limits. Sarah stood at the edge of the asphalt, watching the gray shadow disappear among the trees. Every instinct screamed at her to return to the car, go home, call animal control services in the morning. Instead, she took a flashlight from the Jeep and followed the she-wolf into the night. What she would find deep in the Alaskan forest would forever change her understanding of what was possible between humans and the wild world. Sarah's flashlight cut through the dense darkness of the Alaskan forest, illuminating the blood trail in the snow that stretched deeper into the thicket. The she-wolf walked ahead about 20 feet away, occasionally stopping and looking back, checking if Sarah was following her. Her limp became more noticeable. Her left paw barely touched the ground. "How much further?" Sarah whispered, though she knew the she-wolf wouldn't answer. The cold penetrated through her jacket, and the distance from civilization began to press on her. Her cell phone had lost signal half an hour ago. Suddenly the she-wolf stopped, her ears tensed. A sound came from the darkness, low growling, then another. Sarah froze, gripping her flashlight tightly. There were other wolves around them. The first appeared on the left, a large black male with a scar across his right eye. Then a younger gray wolf emerged from the right, his eyes gleaming in the flashlight beam. The third, brown with a gray muzzle, came out from behind a tree ahead. All three looked at Sarah but didn't approach. The wounded she-wolf approached the black wolf and quietly whimpered. He sniffed her bandaged paw, then looked at Sarah. In his yellow eyes was no aggression, only assessment. "She brought me to you," Sarah said quietly, trying to stay calm. "She's injured." The black wolf tilted his head as if understanding her words. Then he turned and began walking deeper into the forest. The wounded she-wolf looked at Sarah again and followed him. Sarah hesitated. Following one wounded wolf was risky, but following an entire pack? That was madness. But something in the animal's behavior told her they weren't going to attack. They were leading her somewhere with a definite purpose. After half an hour of walking, they reached a small clearing. Sarah stopped, not believing her eyes. In the middle of a circle of trees stood an old wooden cabin, half buried in snow. The chimney wasn't smoking, the windows were dark, but the structure looked solid. What was stranger, around the cabin lay 4 more wolves. They raised their heads as the pack approached, but didn't stand up. In the flashlight beam, Sarah saw why. 2 had bandaged paws, 1 had a bandage around his ribs, the 4th lay completely still, only his chest barely rising and falling. "Dear God," Sarah whispered, "someone is taking care of you." She approached the cabin. There was no door handle, but the boards were moved aside so 1 could enter inside. Sarah peered in with her flashlight and gasped. Inside was a real field hospital for animals. The walls were covered with shelves of medications, bandages, instruments. In the corner stood a table with open veterinary textbooks. On the floor lay several blankets and pillows. On the table lay a notebook. Sarah opened it and read the first entry. Day 127. Found 3 more wounded. Someone is setting traps in prohibited zones. The wolves trust me now, but I can't handle it alone. Need help? Sarah quickly flipped through the pages. The entries were kept for almost a year. Someone lived here, rescuing wounded wolves, giving them medical care, then releasing them back into the wild. The last entry was dated yesterday. Feeling weak. Temperature hasn't dropped for 3 days. If something happens to me, who will take care of them? Luna is the smartest. Maybe she knows what to do. Luna, the wounded she-wolf who had brought her here. Sarah turned around. Luna stood in the doorway, looking at her. Behind her stood the other wolves, their eyes reflecting the flashlight beam. "He's sick, right?" Sarah asked. "The person who was helping you?" Luna whimpered and turned her head toward the far corner of the clearing. There, covered with snow and branches, stood another small cabin. Through the single window, weak light was visible. And that's when Sarah heard what made her blood freeze, a weak human voice calling for help. Sarah rushed to the second cabin, snow crunching under her feet. Luna and the rest of the pack ran alongside, their paws silently touching the ground. Through the window, she saw the silhouette of a person lying on a narrow bed, illuminated only by a candle. "Hey," Sarah shouted, knocking on the wooden wall. "Do you need help?" A weak voice answered from inside. Who's there?" "Dr. Sarah Mitchell, biologist with the Department of Fish and Game. Your she-wolf brought me here." Pause. Then the sound of slow steps. The door opened, and Sarah saw a man about 40 years old, exhausted and pale. His long dark hair was wet with sweat, his beard uneven. He held onto the door frame to keep from falling. "Luna brought you." He looked at the wounded she-wolf sitting next to Sarah. "Smart girl. Are you Jack Thornton?" Sarah read the name on the mailbox near the road a kilometer ago. "Former veterinarian," he nodded, leaning against the wall. "Now, I don't know who I am." Sarah helped him return to the cabin. Inside it was warm thanks to a small stove, but the smell of illness hung in the air. On the table lay bottles of antibiotics and other medications. "How long have you been living here?" Sarah asked, checking his temperature. The fever was serious. 2 years, Jack sat on the bed, breathing heavily. "After I quit the city vet clinic. Couldn't watch anymore as people told me to put down healthy animals because owners didn't want to pay for treatment." He pointed to the window through which the wolves were visible. "Found the first one a year ago, a male with a gunshot wound in his shoulder. Pulled out the bullet, nursed him back to health. He brought others. They know I won't harm them. And the poachers?" Sarah remembered the entries in the notebook. Jack's face darkened. "Someone is setting traps in protected areas. Not ordinary hunters, professionals. They target alpha individuals to break up packs. And something tells me this is connected to land deals." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean? Did you see those new road signs to the north? Future resource development site? A company called Nordic Timber is buying land for pennies. But as long as protected species live here, they can't start logging." Sarah's heart quickened. She had heard about Nordic Timber, a large conglomerate with a dubious reputation regarding environmental protection. "You think they're deliberately destroying wolves?" Jack nodded, then suddenly grabbed his chest, breathing heavily. "Pneumonia," he whispered. "I tried to treat myself, but—" "You need a hospital," Sarah said decisively. Right now. No, Jack grabbed her hand. If I leave, who will take care of them? Luna trusted you. She's the smartest of all. She knew you would help. As if in response, Luna peeked through the door, her yellow eyes looking directly at Sarah. I'm not a veterinarian, Sarah said. I'm a biologist. But you understand them, Jack pointed to the wolves. And you have authority in the department. You can stop the poachers. Suddenly, low growling was heard from outside. The black alpha male stood at the edge of the clearing, his ears alert. The rest of the pack quickly rose, their noses twitching, catching scents. What is it? Sarah whispered. Jack struggled to his feet, approached the window, and extinguished the candle. They've come, he said quietly. The poachers. They found us. In the darkness of the forest, flashlights began to flicker, not one, but at least 4. Men's voices carried between the trees. The tracks lead here, Carl. Look, a hut. Someone lives here. Luna approached Sarah and gently touched her hand with her nose. Then she looked at the forest where the men were approaching, and again at Sarah. The message was clear. I trust you. Protect us. Sarah clenched her teeth. She didn't know how exactly, but she wouldn't let these people harm the wolves. Sarah quickly turned off her flashlight and crouched by the window. The poachers were approaching, their voices becoming clearer. She counted at least 4 men, all armed. Jack, is there a back exit? She whispered. He nodded, pointing to a small door in the opposite corner. But they've surrounded the clearing. We're trapped. Luna approached Sarah and gently touched her hand with her nose. Then the she-wolf looked at the other pack members and let out a quiet, barely audible howl. Instantly, all the wolves scattered in different directions, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. Are they running away? Sarah asked. No, Jack smiled despite his fever. They're preparing. The first poacher entered the clearing, a large man in camouflage clothing with an automatic rifle. 3 others followed him, all with powerful flashlights and weapons. Carl, look, 2 cabins, said one of them. Someone really lives here. Carl, obviously the leader, approached the first cabin where Sarah had found the veterinary supplies. Check this one. We'll take the one where the light was on. Sarah clenched her fists. Her heart was beating so loudly that she thought they would hear. Beside her, Jack held onto the wall, trying not to cough. Carl approached their cabin and knocked on the door with his rifle butt. Wildlife control agent. Open up. Sarah and Jack exchanged glances. They knew it was a lie. We know you're in there, Carl shouted. And we know you're hiding wolves. Suddenly a long, terrible howl came from the forest. Then another from the other side. The poachers tensed, raising their weapons. How many are there? One of them asked nervously. Calm down, Ray Carl said. They're just wolves. We have tranquilizers. But Sarah knew the wolves were doing something else. They weren't just howling, they were coordinating. Luna appeared at the window, her eyes meeting Sarah's. The she-wolf nodded toward the back door, then disappeared again. She wants us to move, Sarah whispered. Jack struggled to his feet. Where? Suddenly a scream from one of the poachers was heard. Carl, something's wrong. Tom's gone. Sarah looked through the window. Indeed, the 4th man was nowhere to be seen. His flashlight lay on the snow, but he himself was nowhere. Tom, Carl shouted. Tom, answer. Silence. Then a sound came from the darkness, not howling, but a human voice. Help. Something's dragging me. Wolves don't attack humans, Jack whispered with a smile. But they're very good at scaring them. Another scream, now from the other side of the clearing. The second poacher had disappeared. Carl and his last partner stood back to back, waving flashlights in all directions. What the hell is happening here? Just then Luna came out into the clearing. She sat calmly in the middle of the open space, looking directly at Carl. Behind her, one by one, the other wolves appeared. There were 8 of them in total, the entire pack, including those who had been wounded earlier. Shoot, Carl screamed. But when he raised his weapon, Luna did something unexpected. She stood up and slowly walked toward him, without fear, without aggression. Just walked. Carl trembled, holding the rifle. Stay back. Luna stopped 3 feet from him. Then she sat down and tilted her head, looking at him with strange wisdom in her eyes. She's not afraid, Carl whispered. At that moment, Sarah understood Luna's plan. The she-wolf wasn't attacking. She was showing Carl that they weren't aggressive, that they were defending themselves. Sarah opened the door and stepped outside. Put down your weapons. Carl spun around sharply. Who are you? Dr. Sarah Mitchell, official biologist with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. You're on protected ecosystem territory without permission, with unregistered weapons. Carl's face paled. We were pursuing dangerous animals. The only dangerous animals here are you, Sarah said, pulling out her service badge. And I'm recording all of this. She showed her phone, which was quietly recording video. Attack on a protected species, illegal entry, poaching. Carl lowered his weapon. Who paid you? Sarah continued. Nordic Timber? The man's eyes widened in surprise. He knew he was exposed. But suddenly a new sound came from the forest, the hum of a helicopter. A searchlight pierced the darkness, illuminating the clearing with bright white light. Luna jumped up and looked at Sarah with alarm. These weren't rescuers. These were Carl's bosses. The helicopter landed at the edge of the clearing, its blades raising a cloud of snow. The searchlight blinded everyone, but Sarah didn't look away from the three men in expensive jackets getting out of the machine. One of them, a gray-haired man in glasses, was obviously the chief. Mr. Anderson, Carl shouted. We can explain everything. Anderson approached, not taking his eyes off Sarah. Dr. Mitchell, I hear. You're creating problems for us. Only for those who break the law, Sarah replied, holding her phone in her hand. The recording was still going. Luna remained nearby, showing no fear. The rest of the pack positioned themselves in a semicircle around the clearing, not threatening, but ready for action. You're recording a conversation without permission, Anderson said. On private property. This is a federal protected zone, Sarah smiled. Check the maps. And your people are poaching here. Anderson frowned. We have permits for predator control. Forged permits, Jack's voice suddenly rang out. He came out of the cabin, leaning on a stick, but holding himself with dignity. In his hands was a thick notebook. I recorded everything, dates, numbers of your traps, photos of wounded animals. Anderson's face paled. You have no right. And you have no right to destroy a protected species for profit, Sarah interrupted him. She raised her phone higher. This conversation is being broadcast live to department headquarters. Federal agents will be here in 5 minutes. This was a lie, but Anderson didn't know it. Luna suddenly stood up and slowly approached Anderson. He instinctively stepped back, but the she-wolf stopped and just looked at him. In her eyes was no anger, only sadness and some ancient understanding. She knows, Jack said quietly. They all know. You killed her mate a month ago. Anderson cursed. They're just animals. These animals are smarter than you, Sarah interrupted. They saved 2 people tonight, and you're trying to destroy them for money. The sound of distant sirens began to come from the forest. Sarah smiled. Her bluff had worked. Someone at the department had had the sense to track her location. Boss, we need to go, one of Anderson's men whispered. But Anderson wasn't giving up yet. You don't understand the economic significance of this land. Jobs, development. I understand the significance of the ecosystem, Sarah said decisively. And I understand that some things are more important than money. Luna approached Sarah and gently pressed against her leg. The rest of the pack did the same, surrounded Sarah and Jack with a protective circle. Even the wounded wolves stood up, showing unity. The sirens were getting louder. Anderson angrily looked at Sarah, then waved his hand to his men. Let's go. This isn't over. For you, it's over, Sarah said, showing her phone. I have all the evidence. The helicopter rose into the air, leaving Sarah, Jack, and the wolves in the clearing. 10 minutes later, federal rangers arrived along with a medical team. Jack was taken to the hospital, but not before he handed Sarah all his records and the keys to the cabins. Take care of them, he whispered. They trust you now. When the rangers arrested Carl and his men, Sarah remained alone with the wolves. Dawn was breaking over the forest, painting the sky in pink and gold colors. Luna approached her and sat nearby. Sarah carefully placed her hand on her head. What now? She asked quietly. The she-wolf looked at her, then at the forest, then at Sarah again. The message was clear: we stay together. A month later, Sarah received official permission to create a wildlife rehabilitation center at the site of Jack's old cabins. Anderson and Nordic Timber were under FBI investigation. Luna and her pack became official wildlife ambassadors, helping Sarah teach people about the importance of preserving ecosystems. Every evening, when Sarah finished work at the center, Luna accompanied her to the car. Sometimes the she-wolf looked at the city lights in the distance, then at Sarah, as if asking, "Do you remember that night?" Sarah always remembered. The night when trust between human and wild nature changed everything.